the recording.
Okay.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Hey, everyone.
All right. Well, welcome to, is it week 4,
week-
5? Where are
Week
we
6. This is week.
at?
No, wait. No, week 5. Week 5.
Week 5, right.
Coming into
Okay.
week 6. Yeah. Oh,
Got
yeah.
it. Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, if you guys are ready and good to go, we can go ahead and start on the demos. Fatima, if you wanted, we could wait a minute just to see if Mandy makes her way in and have Jordan and Shalom give their demo first, if that works.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Take it away.
All right. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's
Hey.
having a good week. I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna do a walkthrough of how the app is, where we're at with the app right now, and then I think Jordan's gonna go through the code. So can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So here I've actually already entered a token, and I have a couple items on the list. So actually, to start out, what we were working on was creating what do you call it, a filtered items input field where users can search for items. So for instance, if they have a list right here, I could search for maybe put in characters, and I'll be able to see all matching items. If I continue, we'll see that there are no items with these characters. But if I put in this, we'll see that the list gets filtered with peanut butter. I could do tacos, and we'll see that it filters the list. So basically what we worked on was adding this input field where users can filter the items, and they can also clear the filter, or just by clicking this exit button, and we will reset and go back to the initial state. So if I were to add an item, maybe add candy, we'll see the item is added. And then if we go to the list, we now have candy, and we could search for it and it will come up, and we can clear the form accordingly. So that's kind of where we're at with it. And yeah, I'll just stop sharing so Jordan can go through the code.
All right.
All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Cool. So I think like maybe we'll start higher level. So the first change we made was, instead of rendering like the list here in list.js, where we created like a child component search list. So here is where we're doing like the database query to get the full list on the token, and we're passing that down as a prop. So here in search list.js, we receive that full list array, and we are then, rendering out like that search field that Shalom showed, and then also like the exit out button. For the search field, it's an input. Every time you type into it, it updates the search that we're capturing here in state. Searched item, and it's let's see, so it's updating that value, and then here in filtered list, we're using a filter, and also like it includes searching with like the normalized name that we're also bringing in from our helper function that they built out a couple weeks ago. So reusing that function to search like the normalized value with the normalized value that's like saved in the database. And then the clearing logic. So our clear button is an X. On click, it hits this function clear search, and which basically just like sets the input field back to like an empty string. Which will update state, and then everything will clear back out to normal and show the full list. So, oh, and I think, and we have it as like a conditional render. So it only shows that X button once you're like writing into it. Yeah, any questions on that?
No, really good.
Yeah, that's
Right,
what.
well, I saw Mandy pop in and then pop back out again, so sadly, I think she might be unable to get in and stay in with her internet.
Yeah.
So if you want to go ahead and take care of the demo then, Fatima.
Sure. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen now. Oops, I think I'm sharing the wrong one. Hold on. Okay, do you see the code in the GitHub
Yep.
page? Okay. So the issue that Mandy and I had was, as a user, I want to mark an item on my shopping list as purchased so that I can learn how often I buy different items. And the acceptance criteria is where a user is able to tap a checkbox or similar UI element to mark an item on the list as purchased, and the item should be shown as checked for 24 hours after the purchase is made. And we assume that the user doesn't need to buy the item again for at least 1 day. Okay, so here is the checkbox to mark that an item is purchased. And if we were to add another item, then the item also has the purchase checkbox. We can mark them as purchased, and then if you change your mind and it's less than 24 hours, we can uncheck them. And behind the scenes, what's happening is that when you check it, the last purchase date is set to the timestamp from when it was checked, and when you uncheck it, then the timestamp is set to null. So you can see this happening in the database. So currently garlic last purchased is null because it's unchecked. When you check it, it updates the last purchase field, and you can uncheck it again. And refreshing the page also keeps the state of the purchase. Oh, and so if you were to set the date to over 24 hours, then it's going to automatically uncheck too. And I'll go ahead and go over the code now. So a couple of things that we did first were we separated out the item list to a component, and then we separated out each item into a component. And in the item component, where the check mark, the checkbox for the purchase is, we created the state variables for checked and days since purchased. And if the use effect, when the component renders, it checks if the purchase date is over. Oh no, it actually just sets the date for the purchase date. Set day since purchased. And then this use effect right here checks the day since purchased. And if it's over 1 day or if it's null, then it sets the check variable to false, and if the day since purchase is less than 1, then it sets the check to true. So this code right here, we simplified it recently. And this update last purchased is it gets called when the user clicks the checkbox, and it gets the item from the database, and then if the checkbox is checked, so if it's true, then it updates the last purchase field to the current timestamp. And if it's false, then it sets it to null here, and then it also sets the days since purchase to null too. Do you have any questions?
Ooh, I have one. I haven't seen server timestamp before. Is that the timestamp of the Firebase server?
Yeah, so
Like
this is
the-
an import from.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I like that because I know like handling time zones is always like tricky. So if you just base on the server timestamp, like that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, when we were on a share one time, I compared like what she was seeing in the Firestore database versus what I was seeing, and it's localized to our own time zone as well.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
I remember correctly researching it last time with one of the collabs. I think it uses like Google standards, like it runs through like the same checks or similar, whatever, to get that. Yeah.
Magic. So cool.
Thank
Well
you
done.
for
I have one
demoing.
quick question for you.
No problem.
I was just going to ask, if you're going to be writing unit tests for this, what type of tests would you want to write?
I guess checking add a test that checks the last purchase, day since purchased. So if it's less, I'll check this the conditional. So if it's less than 1 or equal to null, then that the check box is false.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the changing of the state is really important here, and that's really good. So having it saying like, hey, let's set it here, check the state, set it here, check the state. Well, this looks really well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys, I know Jonathan made the comment on your PR already, but yeah, dates can be a little tricky. So you guys did, I think you really did a good job and came up with a great solution there. So nice work.
Thank you. Yes, it took us like quite some time in the beginning because we were trying to like figure out how to convert the dates into something we could work with, because I didn't know before that the date was gonna be returned in seconds.
Yeah.
And I think we had to, did we have to omit milliseconds as well?
Yeah, I think JavaScript date returns in milliseconds, but then the date from Firebase returns in seconds.
Yeah, it's a lovely thing.
So confusing.
I have to deal with time zones at work. I hate it.
Yeah.
Just to share
Um,
for a second, I have a fun time zone story, which is just that I'm now in Saskatchewan, which is on CST all year round. So from my perspective, everyone just shifted an hour away and I've stayed the same. So calendars are going crazy for sure.
Oh my gosh. Wait, so what is, do you still have daylight saving times, right? So,
No, we're on standard time all year round.
oh, interesting. So what time is it for you right now?
Currently 5:19 p.m.
Got it. Okay.
So it should be
You're an
2
hour
hours
ahead.
different from the West Coast.
Yeah, I
I'm in
attended.
mountain time, so. Good.
I attend an open source meeting every week, and the majority of the contributors are in Europe, and Europe did the time change 1 week earlier than us. So it's like, can we all just get on standard time and leave it alone?
I'm in favor of that.
Great.
So the only thing I wanted to kind of mention and bring up in regards to the work that both of you did is, as I'm sure you're well aware, you've both very heavily touched the list component or the list item and the way that the list displays, in addition to refactoring into a new component for that list that the Jordan and Shalom's branch doesn't have that change in it. So just be mindful of that as you start to merge things in, but you're probably going to run up against some conflicts that Git's going to need some help with. And if you need any help, let us know.
Yeah, thank you.
And then I think the last thing, I know I made the comments in regards to the ARIA labels on your PR, and I saw that you guys made that adjustment, but I didn't notice when you were doing the code demo what the status was of the actual list items. Are they nested inside an unordered list with individual list items now? Because the way the code was written is it was mapping, and each item was its own independent list instead of being an item on a list.
Yeah, I can share my screen again. Shalom, maybe you can talk about this because she just pushed the changes.
Okay, I see it now.
Yeah. Does that look good, or was there
Yeah,
maybe an
if you wanted to, you could. It depends on if you need it for like styling purposes, but the div that sits around that list item isn't entirely like necessary. It might give you a little bit of space or room for styling, but you can play around with that once you start to you know, kind of set things up for style.
You mean this div here, or
Yeah,
another
you
one?
can
Oh,
put
okay.
that key directly on your list item.
Ooh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can
So that's
play
the
around
only
with
other,
that
but that's minor. And again, it may be that you need that div in there for some other purpose in regards to like, I don't know, mobile styling or something along the lines. So it's not a big issue one way or the other there, but definitely having it inside the list items inside a list is much nicer, much cleaner. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, sorry, my Zoom dropped for a second, but actually, yeah, I was looking at that earlier. I don't think we actually need that div. We'll probably do as you said and just put it put the key on the list item. I think it looks cleaner that way too.
Yeah. Great.
Great work, both pairs.
What was that?
Great work, both pairs. Like, hold on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Thank
think
you.
am I saying words properly?
You're breaking up a little bit too.
Oh yeah, that's
Gotcha.
internet issues. Cool. Well, I think it's great for the learning module.
Absolutely. Okay, let me just share my screen here. All right. So let's talk accessibility a little bit. So what, why, and how from the Collab Lab? As you know, you've already done a little bit of the accessibility work. So, you know, hopefully this is all tapped, but let's talk. So accessibility is also kind of known as the ally movement, since we want to really be allies to those who might not be as fortunate to be able-bodied or might have some sort of invisible disability. So, you know, access meaning ACCALL, A11. Yeah, it's a nice little way to think about it. So if you see ally with the two ones, you're thinking access. What is accessibility? Well, to quote the Wikipedia definition, of course, web accessibility is the inclusive practice of ensuring that there are no barriers that prevent interaction with or access to websites on the World Wide Web by people with physical, situational, or socioeconomic disabilities or restrictions on bandwidth and speed. And generally, when sites are correctly designed, developed, and edited, all users will have equal access to information and functionality. So really that kind of founding principle of the web, saying that, hey, everyone should have access to all the different pieces of information equally. And that just by having either a physical or situational disability or a socioeconomic restriction, you shouldn't be able to be disadvantaged because of that or discriminated against because of that. So generally the W3C maintains a working group that is dedicated to web accessibility, and there are standards. And the Section 508 in the US requires government agencies to make websites accessible. And there are some other legal ramifications around serving the public. You have to be able to say, hey, I am accessible to all users, similar to how you have to have wheelchair accessible seating, ramps, change rooms, those kinds of things. Really, the way that they go through this is using assistive technologies. So these are kind of some settings and things that are baked into computers that allow other technologies to properly access and enable people to read these contents. So that could be things like screen readers. If, for instance, you are visually impaired, this will allow you to hear what's on the screen. Screen magnifiers, if visually impaired, so you can actually see what that small text says. Speech input, if say you've lost the ability to use your hands. Assistive keyboards or braille displays. And there's a couple common tools here: NVWA, JAWS, VoiceOver. Personally, as I am fortunate enough to be able-bodied, I have never had an opportunity to use these, but from what I understand, they really do help a user's ability to work with these tools. Why? Why do we want to make our stuff actually accessible? So the first one is that it's just the right thing to do. Be able to help others, say, hey, this is exactly equal, this is shared. It's really important because we don't want to discriminate. We want to actually allow all users to come. It's not actually on here, but I would also argue that it's going to also be the profitable thing to do, considering the large number of users that are out there that have disabilities. If you make it accessible and your competitor does not, you're going to be able to get a lot larger number of customers as well. So it's the right thing to do morally, the right thing to do ethically, the right thing to do financially too, I would argue. Generally, there's also other legal requirements that mean that you have to make it accessible. As some statistics say, in the US, there are more people that are using assistive technologies than are in Canada. So, over, 20% of website visitors. So it's a remarkable number of users. Generally make it accessible to people with disabilities also means it's accessible for everybody. So whether I want to be able to use other toolings that allow us to properly access them or not, it's going to be helpful. I actually really like this. So this is from Microsoft's design pages, and in particular their inclusive design pages. And it really does show how there is really a full spectrum of people with disabilities. And so that could be permanent, temporary, situational, that is of touch, sight, hearing, speaking. So coming from my family personally, right, my father has a disability that disables him from being able to properly speak. So, having the voice input is quite difficult for him. So having a really good input that's touch-wise allows him to really excel in using that technology. So really there's a whole realm of people that can either be temporary, permanent, or situational. And it really allows us to try to figure out, hey, it's not just people with some severe permanent disability. All right, and there are some very simple best practices. I'm personally the expert on this, so I will defer to April if I get anything wrong here. But generally, you want to always have valid, semantic, and I'd argue well-structured HTML. You always want to be able to including alt attributes or image tags, so that if someone's coming with the screen reader and they can actually see it, they kind of will figure out what the image is. Using ARIA attributes really helps. Ensuring all content is reachable via keyboard. So if for some reason I have an ability to use the mouse, well, being able to use the keyboard would be very helpful. Ensuring that content in tab ordering makes sense. You don't want to just immediately jump to the bottom of the page and back up and back forth. It would be very difficult and very hard. Using proper color contrast for people who are having, could be colorblind or have other disabilities with being able to distinguish colors. And also just not using color to signify state. So if something's red or green, it can sometimes be a little bit hard to distinguish, I believe, for some people that are colorblind or red-green colorblind. So if something's red or green, if you can't be able to tell the difference between the colors, you're not going to be able to figure out the state change. So there's a couple ways to actually figure out what's going wrong. So you can use, automated tooling like AXE, guided audits, such as what's in accessibility insights, as well as external audits by other groups. And I'm going to show you what these first two look like in a little bit. So got our React app up here, and let's take a look. So I've already gone through and I've installed AXE. And the way you find it is you go to this little drop down here, you see AXE Dev Tools. Lovely. And then I can pretty much just say, hey, scan all of my page. And it goes through and it says, hey, what's up? What am I missing? And here we seem to have two moderate issues, which are just that the document should have one main landmark and that all page should be contained by landmarks, which are best practices that we should be following. And let's see, if we go here to this one, and we scan all the page, again, just the same thing. Let's see. We can kind of see what's going on here and try to figure out what is and is not accessible. And then finally, once we're here, we start seeing a little bit more. So again, some best practices saying, hey, these things should be considered, should be looked at. But we've seen enough of this. Apparently this only catches about 30%. So let's take a look at the other tooling. So if I go to my plugins and I choose accessibility insights for the web, there's this very neat new one, very neat one. So I'm just going to jump ahead above the automated ones. You've already kind of seen how that works. But let's take a look and let's see how keyboard navigation works. This one's really cool because it tells you a little bit of what the thing is, how you're doing it, and then gives you straight instructions.
Not if you're seeing something on top of the website, it's not displaying onto our screens.
Hang on one second. Thank you, April. All right, let me just change my share for a second. Okay, so as soon as I opened up from, where'd you go? Here, when you click here, and then you go to Accessibility Insights for Web, and I click Assessment, it opens up this new web page. And it's really neat because it has a whole host of things that you get to check. And the neat thing is that you first have a set of automated checks, and then you're able to go through and you're able to actually verify all these things, follow some of the best practices. So I really like this one. So let's just quick demo to show what this looks like. We're going to turn on the visual navigator for this. Oops, and I'm going to close this. And now, as I work my way through, you can see how the tab motions have been captured. And you can see how these things are being shown through their helper. And then when we head back, where did you go? There, we can say, hey, based off of our findings, was this correct? In this case, I'll just tell that it passed. Or we can look at another one, looking at the header functions. So we can say, we'll look at the visual helper and we'll go back to the other page. And we can see that there are two header values here. And say, okay, is this what I want? Well, yes, this one's at the right level. Yes, this one's at the right level as well. Cool, there are no missing headings. Great. And then pretty much you're able to go through the entire website and you can go through all these different checks and all these different tests and say, hey, does this actually meet and fit with the accessibility requirements that I'm trying to satisfy? And I think that's it. I think I've got a couple more resources that I can share up here. But yeah, there's a lot of great links here. I'd recommend you take a look and check them out. But yeah, that's all I got. What questions do you guys have?
Are these Chrome extensions? Are they websites and are they free?
So the two that I've shown you already today, so the Axe Dev Tools, totally free and open. So this guy, Axe Dev Tools, yep, totally free and open. I don't even need to sign up or create a user account. It's great. Same thing with the accessibility suite here. This again is free and open and available to you.
And I guess like
Some of
in
the other ones.
just like in live environment, like coding, is this something like that you would go through, like all the different 24 different steps, like, pass fail? How does that like kind of work in a corporate environment?
Can I punt that off to you, April?
Yeah. I think it depends. Some code bases have more automation around accessibility than others. I know we've talked quite a bit about adding some linter checks that are specific for accessibility within our own code base. It hasn't yet occurred. It's kind of one of those things, especially as a front-end developer, that you just become attuned and looking for as part of your PR process. So like what I was going through your guys' work, and I apologize because it's been a couple of weeks since I've been able to really pull the code and play around with it. Most of what I've been able to do is just kind of look at it out on GitHub. And then, but when I finally got some time yesterday to sit and really go through, as you saw, I pulled out my voiceover and started, navigating around and noticing a few things that I hadn't seen when just looking at code. So yeah, it's a lot of, there's different paths that you can take. Some of it depends on if you have those built-in tools or not. And some of it comes like the more you do it, the more you just kind of know what to add and what to look for. Like, the images, you just know to put an alt tag. And if it is a presentation only, you can notify it as such by giving it role presentation with an empty alt tag. And then what will happen is a screen reader will skip that image and it won't. If it's just presentation only and it's not providing any data or info, you could just have a screen reader go right past it by doing that. Yeah, so kind of some of the biggest common mistakes. One of the things when Axe showed up that you should have at least one main content or one main tag. One of the biggest advantages to having the proper semantics is that you can actually navigate with instead of having to go step by step through a website. There is a rotor menu that you can bring up through your voiceover screen reader technologies that allows you to skip to headers, main sections, links, buttons. Like you can literally scan the page for like the critical pieces that you need so that you can move around the page much faster. And so if it's missing that main element or section, or you're having a button that redirects to a new website instead of having a link that's just designed to look like a button is kind of another big one. Just, as a user, you expect a button to have an action and a link to be a redirect. And so if you push a button and you get redirected, now you're on a completely different tab, different website. And if you're not a sighted user, that's extremely confusing and you have to kind of find your way back. And so it's not the best experience. So yeah, definitely the semantics, having the right structure. I know opened up an issue for you guys in regards to that, just because your nav links are semantically, or excuse me, they're put into your DOM tree at the top, but yet they display at the bottom. So for users who are visual users, but still use voiceover for whatever, and there are users who do that, it's extremely confusing to them because they're at the bottom and they don't like, why am I here? And for unsighted users who are relying on that, they're on the page, but they don't know what page they're on yet because the first thing that's announced to them is the button text. So it's important to make sure that the structure of your HTML is in the correct order, using the correct tags, etc. for that purpose.
I see your hand up, Jonah. I'm just going to say this one thing and give it over to you. I should also mention that Lighthouse exists as well within Chrome natively. And I quite like it because not only does it show just some basic accessibility checks, but also speed and rendering. And if you ever want to support users that are outside of the Western world, looking at speed and how it loads on older devices and all those other things is going to be very important for ensuring that there's equity of access. That's all I got. Jonah, over to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on Jordan's question as well and kind of add on to what April said. I think automation day to day is like great because it catches a lot of issues that kind of devs might forget about or might not introduce. At my last company, we also had accessibility audits because we're aiming to get to, there's like accessibility standards, so like the WCAG, which is like web accessibility group or something, web content accessibility group, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Has like this AAA standards, and like we'll have accessibility audits to like match up against that standard to see how like accessible our site is. So that's kind of like in the wild, like how my last company did it. I'm not sure if every company does that, but yeah.
We have done that for sections of our code. I don't know that, I don't know exactly which, but I know our Mac application brought in auditors, and I think one of our other client apps also did. And there's been talk about bringing it in for our web application as well at some point.
Awesome. Any other questions?
I thought it was interesting in our last cohort, there was an individual who had quite a bit of knowledge of accessibility as a Collabi, and it was a little bit like, oh, wow. And turns out it's because they had a severe accident in which they lost the use of one of their hands for about 6 months while it was rehealing. And so they had to rely on those accessibility features and voice navigation and the like, and realized just how incredibly frustrating that is when a site is not designed or built with that in mind. And so they became quite aware and really educated themselves so that as they developed, they would then contribute more to that problem and that issue.
Wow. It's wild.
One other thing to add, and Jono and April may disagree with me on this, but accessibility is a very, very big topic. And personally, I find I don't really know all the things. So I would argue, try not to be too intimidated by it. Any improvements they're able to make, be it just fixing the tab order or anything, getting area labels, those are really, really helpful. It doesn't have to be perfect at the get-go, unless you're in a federally regulated industry, and then you're going to get sued. But otherwise, just do the best you can and get the best of your heart as far as you can. And yeah, anything's better.
Yeah, I'd say the key things to focus on is the semantics as much as possible, and then making sure your action items are clear, like your buttons and your links that you can tab. If you can tab through your website to all the key pieces of what a user would need to interact with, that in and of itself is a really big step in the right direction.
Do you find that like it's useful to try and bring this up, like if you're pulling a ticket at work as a part of your planning process? Is that typical, or is it something you just kind of decide on the fly as you're implementing a new feature? Or
I try to incorporate it as I develop, because it's a lot harder to retrofit than it is to build it from the beginning. And I say that from experience, because I actually spent, we used to be set up in 6-week cycles. And so we would work on a particular project for 6 weeks at a time, and then have 2 weeks in between to kind of do tech debt and just things that we wanted to do as developers. And so I actually spent a 6-week period going through with one of our staff developers, auditing our website and finding areas that needed accessibility improvement. And there were some elements that I severely wish had accessibility in mind when they were originally developed, because it became quite challenging to meet the standards that we needed to meet just based on the way that they were structured. So things hidden divs that sit behind other divs so that you get the visual impression of what you're looking for. But then from a screen reader's point of view, it has no way of knowing that those two divs are on top of each other and that one doesn't matter.
yeah, they have no semantic value.
Yeah, so it can become incredibly challenging for sure.
So some flavor of like accessibility driven development is good.
Yeah, I think keeping it in mind as you build out, for sure. Yeah, like just kind of checking in every so often, and okay, what happens when I navigate through by tab now? What happens when I navigate through by voiceover now? Like, what would that change do if I weren't able to use this as a sighted, able-bodied user?
Yeah.
just to kind of keep yourself in check as you go. But I don't, yeah. And then again, in time, you just kind of develop a little bit of an awareness of the basics just kind of come to you because you just done it so many times.
Mhm.
But as Graham said, it's a big topic with a lot of opinions. So
One of the things that I think we're fairly lucky to have are a lot of components that are pre-made. So as someone who's a much stronger back-end developer than front-end developer, I can trust a lot of my coworkers' work and say, hey, so I'm going to use this thing, but I see that it's already been made and it's used somewhere else. So thankfully, as it's getting generated from the React into HTML, I see that, oh, a lot of the stuff that's needed has already been added. So in that way, it's helpful. But again, with layout and structuring and adding new things, it's important to always keep those things in mind.
yeah, I'm super excited. We have a design system under development right now. And I'm like, I can't wait. Like, yes.
I'm stoked too. It's gonna be sweet.
But a
Sounds pretty
design
good.
system is when you have like set piece components that you can plug in and it keeps everything consistent. All of the accessibility features have been pre-thought and put into place. And so you literally just have to plug it in and it just works most of the time.
I'm
Awesome.
glad you brought up the data issues with people who have slower connections too, because when I was investigating like how to restructure our database, that was something that was brought up in some of the videos that Firestore put out, is that, you know, if you're making database calls that are not very thoughtful, you can actually cost your users quite a bit of their data plan, which is also definitely an
100%.
accessibility issue.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm harping on this like profitability point too, in that, you know, if you're cutting out 20% of your user base, it's a very bad idea. If you're also making your users use their entire data plans, not a very good idea. And, you know, in my opinion, accessibility shouldn't be a second thought. It should be part of your first thought. So, you know, trying to say, oh, well, I can add this group to my customer base. I can keep this group of customer base. And that's really important. So, you know, not just saying, oh, it's something we do for this other people that, you know, maybe we'll cater to eventually. It's more like, no, this should be part of your original plan when building.
Agreed.
Awesome. Any other thoughts or questions? Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Graham. That was great. Thanks for doing that demo. Well, let's wrap it up with some issues and then we call it end of the meeting.
That works.
Awesome. So let me share my screen. Oh, so I'm just on your computer. This may be interesting. Let's see.
New MacBook?
I got a new Mac. Yeah,
Nice.
but I may need to restart soon, which is
It
not ideal
sometimes
in this
lets
situation.
you, if you set screen share, sometimes it doesn't make you exit out.
Okay, it's making me exit out, unfortunately.
Dang it.
I'll be right back.
Okay. Those permissions on new computers. I remember when I first started with 1Password, US employees were still considered contractors, and then within 6 months or so of me being there, we were transitioned over as, you know, all of us into employees, and so as such they issued us new computers. And I remember being like, yay, new computer. And then I had to set it up and I was like, oh, that's right. I got to set up all of this development environment again.
Yeah, it is brutal.
Yeah.
But I think it's working.
Yeah, we see it.
Yes.
Yep, we see it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the two new issues this week. I will read them out. This is wordy. Okay, so as an item, I want my estimated next purchase date to be computed at the time my purchase is recorded in the database, so the app can learn how often I buy different items. So the acceptance criteria, when a purchase is recorded, the estimated number of days until the next purchase date should be calculated and recorded in the database. The script calculate estimate from the shopping list utils should be used to calculate the next estimated purchase intervals. We should already have this library installed from issue number 3. Notes, think through the data that is needed as inputs to the function in estimates.js and how to use the output. It is likely at this point you'll need to adjust the schema for an item to accommodate the data points required. Cool. And then any questions on issue 10?
Any idea what it means by like you'll need to adjust the schema?
Yeah, so I think depending on what we have, right? Because you have the purchase dates and then you'll have like the soon, or like purchase intervals. You might need to adjust the schema with that. We should also have a look at what estimates does.
Yeah, it might just be like weighted values or something.
Right.
Mm.
So, let's see.
I think there's also part of an issue at some point where you'll need to include in the ARIA label what the status is regarding soon, kind of soon, and not so soon, which might require that be recorded as well.
Ooh, yeah, good point. I don't know if it's where. Wow, I cannot find this. This is really annoying. Actually, let's just. Okay, I was going to bring up the function. Let's just move on to the next issue, and then maybe we can come back to that. So issue number 11. As a user, I want to be able to delete items from my shopping list so that my list isn't cluttered with items I don't want to buy in the future. So it's possible users may make an error when entering an item and may decide they won't be buying a certain item again in the future. Let's help them keep their list tidy. Acceptance criteria: user is able to delete an item from the shopping list. Before deleting, prompt the user to confirm that they really want to delete the item to prevent accidental deletions. Deletion should cause the associated records in the database to be deleted. Notes, as noted in the wireframe, activating the delete link should pop up confirmation dialog because this is a destructive action. And then many teams jump to a modal as a solution key, but modals are fraught with accessibility concerns. Consider using a simple JavaScript confirm dialog, which I think is what we are already kind of using. So here is the wireframe. There's a delete button. This doesn't really show the pop-up. It just says activating delete should pop up confirmation dialog. So it just goes in line with that item itself. Any questions about that issue? Cool. Well,
No, I was just going to quickly say for 11, I think that using the built-in JavaScript, what do they call it? The confirm dialog is absolutely acceptable, but should you choose that you wanted to pursue a modal, just be aware that there is a process within React called Portal that you can utilize, and it goes a long way towards helping you solve some of those accessibility issues. It's not perfect. You still have to handle your focus, but it does help quite a bit than just trying to float a div with a Z index.
don't float a div with a Z index. So, yeah. Awesome. Well, while I have it up, I also found the estimates. This is for issue number 10, the estimates function. So let me log this one a little bit. So it looks like it takes a previous estimate, 14, unless otherwise specified, and then it calculates a factor here, an average interval between the previous factor and the latest factor. So I can link this in the Slack channel if you want to take a look at it, but this would probably be a good idea of like what information you need to give to this function, and then also like what information you're expecting back looks like it just returns a number based on TypeScript. So nice. The pairs this week are Jordan and Fatima, and Shalom and Mandy. Does anyone have any preferences on issues to pick? Cool. Then I will assign Jordan and Fatima on issue 10. You guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Cool. And the other pair on the other issue. All right. Awesome. And I'll be doing office hours this week, so look out for a Slack poll. But otherwise, that's it.
Awesome.
So let me stop sharing. Oh wow. Type.
All right.
Done
Another
deal.
great week.
Thank you. Yes, well done. Yeah, let us know if there's any issues with the merge, but I think both PRs are approved, so ready to go whenever.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks.
Sounds good. Thank
Bye,
you so
y'all.
much.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
I'll see you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.